Hi, today we're going to make naan bread. This is the final result that you can expect when you follow this recipe. I just wanted to show you in advance so that you know what you're actually making. Naan is coming from India, and naan is very simple to make. It has 3 ingredients. It has all-purpose or bread flour, water, and salt. That's all the ingredients you have in sight. In this case, I'm adding a little bit of butter and garlic. Those would be called buttered naans, but you can do it as you like. The other version of naan would be called roti. Roti is using full grain flour. The recipe itself, I'm going to post the details in the description, but it's basically per 100 grams of flour, you're going to be using 60 grams of water, and you're going to be using 2 grams of salt per 100 grams of flour. In this case, I'm going to be making 5 naan breads. And it's surprisingly easy to make. I was confused. Initially, I have always been making naan with yeast. I have been adding a little bit of yogurt, some butter directly into the dough. But when I was in India, seeing how the people operate the tandoor oven, which is where you bake it, they have not been using anything like that. So I gave it another shot and I tried again, and this is basically the recipe that came out. So just add the water and add the salt. I'm always using a scale because that way I can be a little bit more precise. That's also what I recommend you to do. But of course, the amount of water that your flour can absorb depends a little bit. In this case, I'm using an Italian flour which absorbs a lot of water, but chances are you might have to add a little bit less water, but the recipe should compensate for that. Now just get your hands dirty and start kneading the dough. I like to just rotate like this to incorporate everything, and then I do the actual kneading. You don't have to knead that much because we don't want to create such a super tight gluten network. We still want our dough to be very elastic. That's why I'm just kneading a little bit. You can of course also use a machine for this, but I always like to use my hands because that way I get a much better feeling for the actual dough that we will be making. So yeah, I'm doing this for around 1 or 2 minutes, and that's it. Basically, then our dough is ready. And I was surprised how easy it is to make naan breads. The secret though is the tandoor oven, which of course we don't have at home. We don't have a tandoor oven. But what we can do is we can use the broiler function of our oven. And what we are going to do is we're going to bake this very close to the broiler. This helps. In my case, I do have a special gas-powered pizza oven, and I'm going to be using this oven to make the naans. I like to cover them with a little bit of butter and garlic in the end, but this is just my personal preference. You can just omit this step if you don't like to do that. If you were to make a roti, then you would just be using full grain flour. But other than that, the recipe is the same, although you might have to use a slightly different level of water. And you see the dough is already coming together with just a few minutes of kneading. I'm doing a little bit of stretch and folds here, not too much of stretch and folds, just really a little bit. I like this, and the dough also stops sticking to the container, which is good. I'm just going to let it rest a little bit, then the dough is going to do its magic on its own. We're going to have a better gluten network over time, no extra kneading needed. Cover this, put it to the side, let it rest for 30 minutes or so, and yeah, let's go ahead and make the actual naans. I'm doing one stretch and fold here to just remove the dough from the container, and you can already see that after this stretch and fold, the dough is already quite silky. Take it out, put it on your surface, and now start dividing. I wanted to make 5, and you can see me screwing up a little bit here, but don't worry, you can just take some scraps and put that on another dough ball. Normally I would be using a bench scraper or a dough scraper to do this, but it was currently in the dishwasher. That's why I just used my knife. You can just very easily also use the knife. What you could also do here is if you want to make sure that they're all equal in size, you can just use a scale and measure it exactly. And now I'm going to show you how easy it is to actually shape them. I'm putting it like this on the surface, I'm not using any flour, and I'm just going like this, pushing outwards, inwards, and the dough really starts to come together. First one done. Now I'm dragging it a little bit over the unfloured surface, and this really helps with putting the dough together. If you were using flour, this would not work. Since the dough is not that hydrated, it does not start to stick to the surface. So again, one more time, pull it outwards, inwards, and keep doing this, and then start rolling it over the unfloured surface. You basically have to tuck the dough on top of each other, and the friction helps to form a nicely looking ball. We're doing this because then in the end, when we shape the actual naan bread, everything is a little bit easier. We are going to have a more uniform looking dough, which is what we want. We want our naan to look nice and round. This is actually, I think, the hardest part to get the naan right, this pre-shaping. But give it a shot yourself. It took me a couple of attempts, but now I know it, and you can use this for other recipes as well. It's pretty much always the same. Now that you basically shape the naans, you have to wait a little bit. So you couldn't put them now directly into the final naan shape because your gluten is very, very tense. You need to wait at least 30 minutes or so before you can do the actual shaping, or else your dough is just going to pull backwards. That's the same also when making pizza or making bread. After this shaping process, you just have to wait a little bit. Keep practicing this. This is a really good skill to have to shape some dough balls. I'm just going to place them in a container again, cover them up so they don't dry out, and then I'll be back in 30 minutes. And here you can see me already melting some butter and some garlic, which I'm gonna use to brush. If you're using the oven, put it on the broiler function and the max temperature. That's what you want. And then you wanna bake it very close to your broiler, ideally on a stone if you have a stone. But I'm gonna be using my pizza oven, which is this pizza boy, this badass. It goes to 450 degrees Celsius. Don't ask me how much that is in Fahrenheit. And I'm very excited about trying this with naans. I've not done this before. This is the first step where you want to use additional flour. Add some additional flour on the surface and then start shaping your first naan bread. Then removing it from the container right now and putting it in here, it relaxed and we can shape it. I'm using my hands to spread it apart a little bit like a pizza. You could also use a rolling pin here because there's no gas inside, so it doesn't matter. We cannot degas the dough because there's no gas inside. No fermentation happened. Then just add a little bit more flour. You don't want it to stick, and then just start spreading it. One thing that I like to do is I like to use gravity like this. So the dough hangs a little bit and gravity makes it stretch. If your dough doesn't stretch as much as you would like, then just leave it resting for a couple of more minutes, and then it's gonna be okay. Yep, so I'm just rotating it, stretching it, putting it into the final shape of the naan bread. The shape doesn't really matter, it's just a visual thing in the end. Now I'm taking my pizza peel. I added, no, actually in this case I didn't even add semolina flour. Normally I would add a little bit of semolina flour. I'm brushing my naan now with my butter garlic mixture, and then it's ready for baking. I'm not using semolina flour because the dough is not that humid, so I'm not scared of it sticking to the pizza peel. But normally, if you want to be safe, add a little bit of semolina flour to your pizza. For baking, you want to make sure that you have maximum temperature, just like in the Tandoor oven. So that's why I figured this oven could be perfect to just try it. If you're in your home oven, as said, as close to the broiler as possible. It should be ready within 2 minutes. I'm just gonna return it and then let's see. Are you excited? And here we go. The final version of the naan. Beautiful charring, butter and garlic also charred. It's going to be delicious. And the full batch of them. Hope you enjoyed watching this video and hope it was helpful.